Okay, well, welcome back everyone, it's Nicola Cairncross here, and today I thought I'd talk to you about your fatal flaws. For a long time, until I was about 38, I laboured under the illusion that I had some fatal flaw that was stopping me becoming successful. I think subconsciously that was sabotaging me because I kept sort of trying again and failing again. And it was only really when I got to the age of 38 and I had that epiphany in my living room, and I suddenly realised that it wasn't about any fatal flaw that I had that was stopping me becoming successful. It was just me not taking 100% responsibility and having a victim mentality and always looking for reasons and excuses why things weren't going well. So the minute I had that sort of mind shift, things started to change. But I thought it might be fun to go through some other fatal flaws that entrepreneurs might have. And let's see if there's a good side to them, shall we? Because I think there probably is. One of the first things that most entrepreneurs have is some kind of dyslexia. They've done quite a lot of testing of entrepreneurs, and writing dyslexia is very high up on the list of things that the entrepreneurs typically can't do very well. Basically, that means you have to find other ways around it. It means that's forced a lot of entrepreneurs to become entrepreneurs because they can't write and didn't do well at school, so they had to find a way to make a living apart from that. Also, I know one online entrepreneur who is incredibly dyslexic, and that forced her into making videos way before anybody else did. So, she really had an edge there because she was building relationships with her people, very loyal relationships, because they were actually seeing her speaking to them like I am to you today, and that creates a great bond, apparently. Well, I know it does with the people I watch anyway. So number dyslexia, let's have a think about that. I'm a real big sufferer with number dyslexia, which is a bit of a weird one when you think that I became a wealth coach very early on in my coaching career. And actually looking at the page that I wrote all these fatal flaws on, let's just cover up some of them so you don't see them. The opposite page is full of numbers. So it didn't hold me back too much, did it? I think I just have to be very careful and check the things I'm doing, and I've learned sort of techniques and picking up when things might go wrong. So for example, when I do my spreadsheets, I always have a check column that's checking acrossways rather than just checking downwards. So, there's things you can do to alleviate that if you've got number dyslexia like I have. I only got grade 3 CSE maths, but it didn't stop me buying £500,000 worth of hotel no money down, did it? As long as I can work a calculator, I'm all right. One very successful entrepreneur I know has got a condition, and he's very open about it, where he can't remember people's faces when he's not with them. Even like really his nearest and dearest, he goes away and he can't picture their faces. But that doesn't stop him being one of the best networkers I've ever met. So you'd think someone who couldn't remember people's faces would struggle, but no, he knows who people are when he's in front of them again. So it hasn't stopped him building his business based entirely around networking, because he's just such a thoroughly nice bloke. Another thing that can be considered a fatal flaw is your learning style. I was blooming hopeless at school, because it involved a teacher standing up in front of a blackboard. Now, you'd think as a highly visual person that would be fine for me, but often what they did was they just used the blackboards to make sort of one-word notes. They didn't actually use the blackboard to do drawings. And really, my life changed dramatically when I came across the concept of mind mapping, because that enabled me to get all the information out of my head in a visual form and then reorganise it afterwards. I'll never forget the day I watched I think it was a 12-year-old demonstrating how to do mind mapping, and I was just blown away, and I've used it ever since. I use it to work out contents of books, I use it to work out the contents of webinars. I use it just to start any project at all, and there's some great mind mapping software, but I actually prefer to do my mind mapping with a pen and paper, because I find that I get much more creative away from the computer. So by all means, draw it out on pen and paper first and then transfer it to software if you like. But software is very good for making presentations actually, or doing webinars, because you can hide all the different levels of the mind map and just reveal one at a time as you're going through the information. I mean, I often say to my sister, who is highly auditory, I mean, she's a singer, so that's just as well, really. But she often tries to explain things to me on the phone. And I say to her, Heather, it's just not going in. You're going to have to either tell me when I see you, or draw it out for me and send it to me, or write it out in an email. because I cannot take it in. Just listening to you on the telephone, it's just a burble blur of words. So know your learning style, I think, is really important. And then once you do know your learning style, find some really good tools to help you with that. And then that fatal flaw will turn into a strength. Okay, different personality types. You may think that you've got a fatal flaw in your personality. Well, I hope you don't anyway. But there are different personality types. And as I've talked about several times, there's a fantastic personality profile called Wealth Dynamics, which is by Roger Hamilton. And if you just search Google, you'll find it. And it will tell you what personality type you have and also what is your fastest route to the money. So, for example, as I've said many times, I'm a star creator profile. So I love to create things. I've got a little bit of mechanic in me, so I like to know how things work. And that helps me be able to pick up software very quickly. But my star profile is the thing that enables me to sit and talk to a telephone like it's a real person, and also to stand on stage and talk to, well, up to 1,000 people I've spoken to. And yes, I get little flutters of nervousness, anticipation, excitement, but I don't get the stage fright that lots of people get, which stops them being able to do the same thing. So the creator star personality type is me. And then I've had business partners who were also creators. And my late partner, Steve, was a Lord accumulator. So he liked to accumulate assets and make income from assets that he'd accumulated. And he was very much an introvert, which Lord accumulators often are. So we were right down the opposite ends of the spectrum there, which made for some interesting business conversations, let me tell you. So yeah, think about your personality and get some personality tests done. The other two I recommend are the Myers-Briggs personality test. Jordan Peterson's got a good one called Know Myself. And the other one I really recommend is the Kolbe-A test. One of my mentors introduced me to that. It shows you, when you've done the test, your preferred method of taking action. So for example, I'm a fast start, number 9 on the fast start out of 10. And I'm a number 2 on the follow-up and number 2 on the research. So I have to know myself well enough to either get someone else in to do the research and then also get people in to do the follow-up after I've gone in and got things going at a super fast pace. So Kolbe-A, Wealth Dynamics, Myers-Briggs, and the Know Myself, Jordan Peterson. I think you'll find those 4 incredibly helpful. And the thing is, if you know what you're like, then you can work with it rather than working against it. The other thing is you might have a personality who prefers to be working outside and being out and about all the time rather than being sitting in an office. I certainly don't like being in an office where I can't leave. I remember working at a big music company, Sony Music, and I used to go and cry in the toilets at lunchtime because I felt like I was in a prison. I couldn't go home before 5:30 no matter what happened. Whereas a lot of the people in the A&R department, for example, were going out for meetings and going out for coffee and doing their jobs at restaurants and cafes and recording studios. And I always felt deeply jealous of them because they were out and about. So every job I've ever done since, or every business I've ever done since, has given me the freedom to decide where I want to be and when I can go out of the house. Whereas my son Nelson, he absolutely has to be outdoors. He absolutely loves it. He's a music producer, but he's also works in pubs, and he's in New Zealand at the moment, travelling around in a van. And that is absolutely the ideal lifestyle for him because he just loves to be outdoors. Through lockdown, he worked with a tree surgeon, and he was doing things like fencing and decking and roofing and all sorts of terrifying things like that. But then he'd come home and he'd be able to work on his computer for a few hours making music. But he had to have that balance or he felt like he was trapped. As my daughter's a right little homebody, she would be happy if she never had to go out of the house again, I think, because she likes to keep cosy. So she's the complete opposite to Nelson. She does like to get out, but she's not as desperate to go out in the wild as he is. So once you know these things about yourself, you can actually work with them rather than fighting against them. Then you've got your introverts and your extroverts. I think of myself now as a confident introvert, in that I love to go out to conferences and networking and meetings and dinners and all that sort of thing. The thought of it is terrifying. The thought of it puts me off. The thought of it makes me want to say no to things, but actually when I get there, I quite enjoy it. Again, I'm not very good in a room full of people where I have to socialise, and I'm not very good with chit-chat, but put me on a stage in front of 1,000 people and I'm happy as Larry. And then I also do need some come down time afterwards. So I used to come back from conferences when I'd be speaking particularly, and I'd need sort of 2 or 3 days not really doing very much at all, because the adrenaline of these weekends was so high. I needed a few days to come down off my own adrenaline afterwards. So are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you someone who only gets, your fulfillment from being around people? If so, how can you build that into your business? And the final one I came up with was impatient and patient. I'm a very impatient person. Oh my God. My learning style is visual kinesthetic. So I'll start learning something visually, not keen on learning from videos, but have forced myself to do it. I'd rather learn by reading, because I can read much faster than videos, because I'm a very impatient person. And then I need to start doing quite quickly. That's the kinesthetic part of me. So so are you an impatient person? If you are, is there any way you can put things in place behind you so that when you go off half-cocked, as they say, you can have some sort of fail-safe or some sort of safety net, or people coming along behind you to clear up after you and make things tidy that you've got started because you were so impatient, perhaps? Now, when you're a patient person, that can often mean that you're a procrastinator. You don't feel that urgent need to get things going. So is that something that you can work with and team up with a more impatient person to boot you over the starting line occasionally? So you can see that all of these things could be considered flaws, but actually they can often become your greatest strength. I think the real tip with all this is to know yourself really, really well, and to not necessarily work with people in an employed kind of team, but certainly get a load of people around you on a freelance kind of basis that really support you. And if you're trying to build a big business, you'll certainly need to think about each person's different personality, different learning style, introvert, extrovert. If they're going to be a tribal kind of person, that's the other thing you need to think about. Are people very tribal? There's a great book called Great Boss, Dead Boss, which really goes into the tribal nature of people in organisations and how to work with that as well. So there's a good tip for you right at the very end. And I hope that you get to know yourself, you get to know your fatal flaws, which aren't so fatal at all, are they? And use them as strengths indeed. And I really hope you've got something out of this, and I'd love to see your comments down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.